All right, we're going to get started here. So what we're going to do today is walk through an explanation of Epicenter and Vensim working together. I see there are a number of people that are logged in for the webinar today. And what we'll do is start off kind of explaining a little bit about how Epicenter models get built and how they work in production. And then from there, I'm going to walk through and create a Vensim model, and then from that model, then we'll be able to see how to put in code that creates a user interface against it. And we'll be sharing with you at the end of the webinar as well all the code that we'll be using today, so that if you want to try this on your own after the webinar is over, you'll be able to do so. And feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. My colleague will be taking questions as they occurred during the webinar. And then at the end of it, what we'll do is go through that together. We're planning for an hour today, and so we'll stop shortly before the top of the hour at the end of this here. So, so first off, just a little bit about why do this? Why put a model online? What is the purpose of it? And the main reason for it is that when we're working in Vensim or any, say, other system dynamics tools, if you want to share that model with colleagues, what you need to do is ask them to install special software. Even if you're using something like Vensim PLE or something like that, what people need to do if they want to run the model and gain the insights that you have from the model that you've built, you need to tell them, go to the Vensim website, download a PLE version or something else, install it, and then you can start to gain insights. And you're using this unfamiliar package and things. And some people will be willing to do that because they trust you and they know that you've provided valuable insights in the past. But others will not feel comfortable with that. And typically those would be people that maybe have never met you before, or have never seen this before. So having a model online is a force multiplier for the tool. It allows orders of magnitude more people to access the simulation that you've built and learn from it and gain insights from it. So that's where we see there's a big opportunity, not only for individual models, but for the entire field of system dynamics. So Epicenter, just broadly, is what it is a platform for hosting server-side models, creating interactive interfaces on those models, and then sharing those insights on the web. But you can also do it on things like tablets or phone. It's for a variety of things. And one of the things that Epicenter does differently than older versions of our platform is it supports other kinds of languages and supports other kinds of techniques, which then can be combined with system dynamic simulation. So you can combine optimization, for example, or machine learning with your simulation models. And internally here at Forio, we've been doing that on a few projects, and that's been really interesting. So a little bit of history, too, about our platform. Some of you have been with us since the broadcast days. That was the first iteration of our platform back in 2002. And when we then in 2007, I believe, released Simulate, and just last summer released Epicenter. And we changed the name of that product 3 times, but it's really the same product in this third generation. I won't go into the details about why we decided to change the name of it 3 times, but in any case, I can tell you that because we're doing these other kinds of techniques and supporting other languages like R, Python, Julia, and supporting techniques like optimization and machine learning, the name Simulate didn't really work kind of going forward. So we changed the name Epicenter because we're doing techniques in addition to simulation, although simulation is still core to the platform. So here's some of the languages that we currently support. You see a variety of them here, and there's more coming in this area as well. So we plan to support other kinds of languages and commercial languages as well in the future. So from here, actually, I'm going to stop here for a second. From here, what I'd like to do is show you some examples of some things that have been done in Epicenter and give you a sense for what the tool can do. And what I'm going to do, of course, today is focus mainly on models that have been built using Vensim, but I want to show you some other things as well. And here's one of them. So this is an interesting project. This is something that we did a year ago or so, or actually in the fall of 2014, so maybe more like 6 months ago. And this is a model that you perhaps have seen presented at the System Dynamics conference that is happening again next week in Cambridge, Mass. In earlier presentations at the SD conference, for example, we saw the Vensim model that was built, and this is an interesting project. It was funded by USAID or USAID, there's a group called Management Sciences for Health, which is an NGO that worked with USAID to provide this model around HIV and AIDS to the people of Vietnam. And USAID provides funding to reduce the number of cases of HIV and AIDS in various countries. And so there's a model an excellent model that was produced by Gary Hirsch and some others that looks at what kinds of effort should be placed on prevention versus treatment, and in particular, what kinds of at-risk populations should be you can focus on in order to reduce the incidences of HIV and AIDS. And Gary went over to Vietnam and went to places like Haiphong and presented this model. Gary, I don't believe, speaks Vietnamese. The folks that were in Vietnam did speak English, but of course they spoke it as a second language, and they were working with this unfamiliar interface in Vensim. So Vensim's an excellent interface for we modelers. It's a more of a challenging interface for those who don't do modeling regularly. And so a big issue for this group was the fact that even just that the model was in English and that there's this translation that needed to happen in order to get it into Vietnamese. And one of the things that you can do with Epicenter and support it online is provide this in other languages here. So and here too, we can look at other regions within Vietnam. This is done with some features that work with Vensim. When you get into it, then because it's online again, this made it much more accessible and made it possible for people to create their own scenarios and share them. So here I'm looking at Haiphong, for example, and I see I selected the English version of this. I see some background information on the population and how they're split out among different at-risk groups. And I can start the simulation, and I see now my Vensim run. I can expand a graph here and see outcome over the next few years here coming out. And this is my baseline. And then I can start to look at different kinds of interventions that I might do and start to change some of these. So like if I go in here and create a new scenario where I focus on, let's say, prevention, I'm going to go ahead and put in I'm just kind of arbitrarily increasing my prevention by a significant amount here. And I'll call this my prevention scenario. And I can simulate that. And then what I get here is a new line that shows how prevention does relative to the baseline in terms of reducing the cases here. And I can add additional scenarios on here too. I can kind of stack these together. So if I wanted to do another one, which is more around treatment instead of prevention, I can easily do that. And I'll call this my treatment scenario. Okay, and now I can see a third line on here, and I can, it's sort of interesting to see that the outcome in terms of HIV cases is kind of similar between these two, with very different paths forward over time between prevention and treatment. And we can go look at other things too in terms of performance over time relative to the baseline and so on. So there's some neat things here, and you can see that it's this interaction is occurring online, that the model isn't available to the end users, and experts who are clinicians in Haiphong can interact with this model and save results and share them with other people there. So this is one example of an interface that can be done with the tool. Here's another one. This one is around making investments across the portfolio. This is more like a one-page app. And in this tool, what we're doing is showing how my portfolio, my initial portfolio, if I results in this particular return at a certain risk rate and things like that. So this is more of like a portfolio management tool, and I can start to experiment with different totals in terms of emerging markets and bonds, and maybe reduce my cash equivalents to end up with a histogram that shows a Monte Carlo results for a number of runs over time, in this case, 1,000 different runs, and showing the chances of loss here. And then what I can do is I can save that as a run in my account and then get some kind of scoring against this as well. So here I see different scores that have occurred over time for people who've tried this out. And this is how games in some cases get built too. Here we're doing games where we're looking at sort of individual versions as well. And I also mentioned at the beginning, we're starting to do things with optimization. And here's sort of a route optimizer. And we're looking at using the tool for looking at different cities in this case or different places in San Francisco and seeing what the optimum route would be. So it's running an optimization on top of this. And these things can be combined. So you can use optimization with a Vensim model in interesting ways, or use R with Vensim and things like that to gather statistics and things like that. And so that can be very exciting. So let me go back to the presentation here. And here, what we have is what's supposed to be representative of a modeler, a lone modeler working by himself on a model for a team. And what we really want to be able to do is have a modeler who can collaborate with other folks who can maybe provide other kinds of capabilities for producing high production value applications. And so the idea here is that you might have a team of people who do, someone who does design, someone who does modeling, someone who does web development, and have them collaborate together to be able to create applications. So this is actually the team that came together to create that HIV simulation that I showed you earlier. And these people use different techniques. They use different kinds of modeling tools and things like that, or different kinds of tools to work effectively. So modelers will use various kinds of system dynamics tools like Vensim. Web developers will use a variety of different tools, and web designers use other things, and so on. And what we want to be able to do is let people collaborate together on teams to build these things. Although there's a lot that an individual modeler can do as well if she or he are just working on their own to produce an application. And that's some of the things that I want to go through today. So to kind of illustrate that, what Epicenter has is a stack of technologies for building these interfaces. And there's kind of a trade-off in this stack, in that at the top of the stack, things are easier. It's easier to build things, but it's less flexible. And as you go down the stack, you have a lot of flexibility, but that means that you're doing more coding and things like that. And I have a background in simulation, like many or most of you on this call today do. And so I'm not a developer by background, although I've done some basic kinds of stuff with editing HTML and stuff like that. What I find I'm comfortable in is kind of working at these top two levels, and perhaps some of you will feel similarly. And so what I wanted to do for today is really focus on covering these top two levels and show some examples of things that can be done with this user interface designer, and also a library that we call Flow.js that makes it relatively easy to use HTML with some markup to create things that I think start to look like some high production value interfaces and things. And what we're going to do today is take a look at an example with Apple Watches. So I thought that would be a fun example. I use that. Anyway, and it's a basic diffusion model. And what we're wanting to do is look at what are the sales of Apple Watches over time, and sort of see over the course of, say, 24 months or 2 years, the number of watches that are going to get sold based on the number of potential customers that are out there and the number of people that are kind of discovering this watch from install base. So basically do a straightforward model of that. So what I want to do in order to get into that first, though, is to show you a little bit about Epicenter, kind of take you on a tour of the platform and show you how things get built. And then we're going to jump into building this model in Vensim and kind of showing you the connections between the different pieces of the platform. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into, let's see here, there we go, into Epicenter. So I'm going to start from the beginning here, and what we have is when you come into Epicenter, if you go to forio.com/epicenter, you can log in and you can create a free account from in here. So you can sign up over here, and it asks you for some basic information to create the account. I, of course, already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and log into my account here. And when you're in Epicenter, what you'll see is there's a variety of projects. So what we defining as simulations that are available online are called projects. We're getting some feedback again from someone. I'm not sure how that's happening. That's weird. In any case, you have personal projects, and then you also have team-based projects that that you can have as well. So you can see a variety of things in my account here. I have 42 personal projects that I've started, and then there's a bunch of team-based things that are listed out below that. And just to kind of give you an example of that, like within my personal projects here, we can see I can see individual things that I've built out, some tests and things like that. There's a near beer game that I put together, and in here, then you get a URL for running it. And what we've done is divided things out into a model and a user interface. So basically, you put your Vensim model and other models in the model folder, and you put all the files that create your interface in the interface folder. So that's the basics for setting that up. For individual projects, generally, you have only individual access to that. You have personal access to it, but other people, other parts of a larger team do not. For team-based projects, what we're doing is really looking at teams of people that could come together that want to maybe test a model in advance of releasing it online, have people that can build different parts of it and collaborate in order to create an interface. So let me show you an example of that. So we're talking about this this AIDS or HIV model earlier. So here is a count for MSH. This is Management Sciences for Health. And here's the running HIV simulation that we have. And you see a number of runs against that. And there's also a test account. And the way that this can work is you can have a test account where you work on a simulation. And when the simulation is ready to be released, you can push it to production, which would mean putting it in this account, and then it's available. And so you can continue to iterate on this by working on test and having sort of the team work on the test version and then push it to production when it's ready. And what you can see here on this particular team is there's a lot of people that have been involved in collaborating on this project. Some of them are modelers, some of them are QA people, some of them are clinicians from Vietnam and so forth, and they're all working together to create this this simulation. And in addition, there's a number of end users. So there's several end users that are attached to this account too. And from in here, we can get some sense for how they're working together in groups and things. So now I'm into the production level simulation for this particular sim. And well, first off, I can look at the model here, and here you can see the actual Vensim model. It's model.vmf in this case. And then it links to some Excel spreadsheets. So you can see the Excel spreadsheets, which essentially tune it to represent different provinces within Vietnam. So that's the purpose of this here. So you can see those are added in. And then there's a bunch of files that represent the interface for it. But when you have things online too, often what you want to do is do things to control access to different users. So you might be running this for a class, for example, where you have 30 students in your class and you want them to be able to run the simulation, but you want to be able to compare results among all the students in that class, but not have them shared outside the class. And this is the concept of groups that works in this simulation. So you can see here, for example, that there was a test that was done back in November, and there were 21 users that were assigned to it. And there's, you can set limits to it. You can say we want to expire this particular group at a particular time, or limit the number of runs that they can do, or something like that. And inside of here, what we have are different individual users that can access it, and we have different controls associated with them. And you get a little bit of information about what they're doing and things like that. So that's some fine-grained control that you can have for running these simulations. And this also allows some fancier features as well that are often really useful if you want to do, say, a collaborative simulation where people are working together, or a competitive game or something like that. And we've done this in a number of cases, especially in things where you're doing sort of game theory style models, or many of you have heard of fish banks, for example, which was converted into an online simulation, and that runs kind of in a similar way where we have, in fish banks, it's arguably, well, it's competitive and collaborative, I guess, without revealing too much about the answer in that game. But, you make investments, and you're competing for resources within a fishery over time. And so the capability exists within this to build these multiplayer games as well. All right, so one of the other things I wanted to illustrate here was a little bit around how you can combine techniques together to build simulations. So here's a project management model that was built with Vensim and R. And what you can see in the model folder here is that there's an R model and there's a Vensim model. The Vensim model is a .vmf file, and for those of you who are familiar with Vensim, that's a binary file, not the text-based version of it, and that's what Epicenter uses. So when you save a model in Epicenter, or to be used by Epicenter in Vensim, it needs to be a .vmf file. And then the R model is just is usually represented as a simple text-based piece. And so here you can see a very simple calculation done in R. But there's fancier things, that we've done with R, and that, we've seen things where you do complex statistics for analyzing results and things like that over time. And so it's interesting to be able to combine those things together. And let's actually take a look at what that model looks like. Let's see what I did here. Okay. So here's a running version of this simulation with a little interface on it, and sort of a one-page app. Okay, so here we see some results, and this is based on John Sturman's Business Dynamics, Systems Thinking and Modeling for a Complex World. In that book, there's a model, a basic project management model that's being used. You see a number of tasks that need to get done over time, and a certain quality level that are being done with them. And I can adjust that over time and advance the sim. And what's happening here is the Vensim model is calculating the dynamics for the simulation. The R model is making a prediction about when the project should be completed. And so these things are kind of working together. And in this case, that R model is taking data from the Vensim model and calculating this prediction over time. And you can see this running out, and I should be getting close to the end because we're kind of getting close to this predicted month here. And now things start to fall off, and we're getting close to the end of the project here. And I can reset it, and I can run, like, what if I was able to run, say, the perfect project, make 100% here quality instead. And here we kind of have like this ideal project over time, where the project, the simulation progresses, and we're done. So ideally, all projects would work this way, but unfortunately, this is not the case, which is why we can vary the quality level here. All right, so the way this got built, again, is, as I was saying, it has this R model and Vensim model working together, but you can use tools like the User Interface Builder, or UI Builder, to create the interface files to develop this. And what you can see here is the UI Builder for this particular simulation. What we have in here then are different things that can be moved around. Each one of these things then kind of creates the interface for it. And in here, I can set properties for these. So here's a graph, for example. I can say the title of this graph is Undiscovered Rework, and it's going to use that variable in the model and put time on the x-axis, and then that's going to plot it out. I can also do things like advance the model, and if I look at the properties there, what it's going to do is start the game and then step 2 time units every time when I'm advancing each time. So that's basically how that works, and that's creating this interface that we see here. So that's a simple way to go about it. And if you're an individual practitioner wanting to build an interface, this is an easy way to do it. Although, again, it sort of has some limitations in terms of flexibility and things. And what I wanted to do for the rest of our workshop today, the rest of this webinar, is kind of drop down one level below that and show you what can be done using Flow.js, right? Using this level below the user interface builder to create some things that really are still fairly easy, but provide a lot more flexibility in terms of the design of your user interface when using it with a Vensim model. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start off by working with Epicenter directly. I'm going to create an account. And I want to kind of show you how you can create your own account. And again, you can use this for free after the webinar is over to try this out on your own. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I should step back here. I'm going to go to press this green link that says create a new project and start a project from scratch. What you'll see is that when you come into this, it allows you to use an example, or you can make your own project. For today, I'm going to make my own project, but it might be useful for you too. You might try, if you want to, experimenting with using one of the example projects, because that'll give you something that's up and running right away. Although, like I said, after the webinar is over, we'll provide you with the files that we use today as well, so you can upload those and put those in place and kind of experiment with this on your own. And I'm going to give this name for the project day. I'm going to call this my Vensim Apple Watch, let's say July webinar. Sort of a mouthful. But what you can see is when I type in the name of my project, what it does is it create a project ID. And that ID is really the URL that you can use later for accessing the project. And I'm doing this in my personal account right now. So you can see forio.com, and then it says /app, which means application or the type of app we're creating. And then it gives, it's using my personal account name. And my account name is mbean in this case. And then what it's done is it's taken my project name and made it into something that's URL friendly. So it's taken out the capitalization, it's replaced the spaces with hyphens, and that then creates the URL that's going to be available for others to access this simulation after it's available online. And I can make this either public or private. Private means that only I, as the developer or the modeler, can access it. I can only access it if I'm logged into my account. Public means that anyone in the world will be able to access the simulation. And there's actually a third account as well that's available, and this is in the sort of for pay versions. It's called authenticated. And what authenticated means is that you have a username and password to log into it and to gain access. All right, so I've now created this, this account. I see a project here with the new URL that's available. If I went to this URL right now, which I'll do, you can see there's nothing in there. It's empty. 404 means not found. And that's because I haven't put anything in this file yet. So what I need to do is start to build out my model and things. And what I've done in advance to keep things moving along for our webinar today is to put together a simple Vensim model that has our Apple Watch migration over time. And what you can see here, let me go ahead and run this. What you can see is I have new sales, and I can plot that out. There's my new sales graph over 24 months here, starting in month 0. And I can see my remaining market follows a reverse S shape, and my installed base follows an S shape pattern over time. And then, there's also repurchases, and total sales kind of grow and then level off in the future and so forth. And we also are able to do some comparisons here. I've added things like cumulative total sales over time as well. So it's a very basic diffusion model that's in here. So that's how that works. And what I need to do in order to get this into Epicenter is to save the model, and I need to save it as a binary file, a binary format model, which is going to save it as a .vmf. So I can do that here. I can give it a name and save it. But the default for this, as you may know if you use Vensim a lot, is for the text-based version. But what we need in order to get the Vensim model to work with Epicenter is to save it as a binary format. And so I've just done that here as a binary format file. Okay, so now once I have that, and I've tested the model in Vensim, and I know it works, I want to get it working in Epicenter. My first step is just to bring the model into Epicenter, and there's numerous ways you can do that. I find the easiest way to do it is just to drag and drop from the folder to Epicenter. So let me go to my folder that I've been working on for this. Let's see here. And there it is. Okay, and so here's my my model with the .vmf extension that I'm looking for. And I'm going to just drag that over here into the platform, and I can see the model.bmf file has been uploaded. So that's great, and I can see that it happened here. It's right now, it's 11:31 a.m. in San Francisco, so it's the right time for this too. And so the next bit, what I want to do is create interface files. You can see right now, my interface is empty, and I'm not going to use the UI builder for building this today. Instead, I'm going to use, as I said, Flow.js for kind of creating this. And what I want to do is go through and show you how you go about kind of constructing that. And so what I've done is created a series of files that we can use for today to do that. And what I'm going to do is just take files from an interface folder that I've already created and drag them in here into the web page, and then what I'll do is it'll upload all those files. So now I've got them all in, and that's it in terms of if you have everything already prepared, then that's all you need to do in order to get this running. And so now if I go to the project and I click on this, and by the way, one of the things I like to do with this is to open these up in an incognito window. And the reason for that is that makes me clear it so there's no cookies or anything like that saved. I can see what it is really like for a new user who's never gone to this before, what they're going to experience. So I'm going to open the link in an incognito window, and we're going to see. And what I've done is I've kind of created a page that shows different things we can do. The final working version of what we're building up for today is called assumptions.html. I'm going to click on that, and what you can see happening here is loading the model, and I can see market size with 25 million customers. Maybe, I'm sort of assuming that there are 25 million customers for Apple Watches over in the US, I suppose, over the next 24 months. You may disagree with that number, but of course, that's why it's an assumption, something that you can change over time if you want to. And now I'm going to start the simulation. And I can see here some assumptions are going in with sliders, which I can change. I can press simulate, and then here are my results over time for that run. And this is kind of where we're heading in the next 15 minutes or so. So this is what we want to get to be built out. But there's a few things that are going on in here, right? So the first one is somehow we're connecting this interface up with a model that we created, so we need to establish that. And then secondly, we've got inputs that are coming in, and we've also got graphs, we've got other kinds of numbers that are appearing in the interface. So I want to kind of build this up for you piece by piece to kind of get a better understanding of how this all comes together. So to do that, what I thought we could do is start with basics. So what I want to do initially is just create a version of this that just has numbers that appear in the interface like this and total watch sales. So we're going to skip all the other complexities of sliders and things like that and show them the most basic version of this. And this is sort of what we're trying to build up right now. And if I look at my code for this, and I'll just look at it over here, let's see, basic, there we go. And I'll make this bigger for all of you to see. This is how these get constructed. So this is HTML that we're currently looking at. And some of you may know HTML already and it's a big background. And at the top of this, there's a number of files that we need to include to make it work with basically the JavaScript files to make this relatively easy to build. And so Epicenter here is, for example, is a file that Forio provides. Here's the Flow.js version. The min means it's minimized, meaning it takes up the least memory possible for this. And then these things are built on other libraries too. Some of you may have heard of things like jQuery, for example. For graphs, we're using some cool tools that I'll talk about a little bit later as well. So these are all being used together, and these are the JavaScript files for creating this. You don't really need to know a lot about this when you start off, other than just make sure all of these are in there. I think that's if you're starting today, you want to do something like this, there's a lot you can learn about this, I think, but just start off, just say, make sure you include all these things in this header, and you'll be in good shape. Okay, so then next what we do is we're going to create a title for this. We have our Apple Watch sales forecaster title. And you can see that there's some labels around that. What this does is that makes that appear in the tab, and this makes it appear at the top of the page. And then what we need to do, if we go back to our example interface here, let me just pull that back up. No, that's not it. What did I do with it? I must have closed it already. Okay, let me go back to that. What you can see is here we have purchase probability as a label, and then next to it we have an input field where I can change the purchase probability with the number that's in here. And if I go here, what you can see is I have this label that says purchase probability, just like I saw. And then I have the input for it, which is just called input. And that's how you create a text input in HTML. And then I use this technique that says data-f-bind. And this is what binds that variable to the Vensim model. So this is really it. So this model has a variable called purchase probability. If I go back in here, I can see here's my purchase probability variable. And I'm just referencing that name in the interface. And that creates enough to kind of bind this together. The other thing I need to do is to tell Vensim, or tell the Epicenter rather, that I want to use this Vensim model. So, and the reason I have to do this is because in some cases, as I illustrated earlier, we might want to combine different models together. So we might, you could have multiple Vensim models that are running simultaneously. You could have Vensim and R running simultaneously. So there's a variety of techniques here. And what we do is we establish channels to communicate with those models, and that's what we're going to use. So here, I called my model model.vmf, and I'm just establishing that here. And if I wanted to name it something else, I would just change it here to set it up. And again, for an initial introduction, that's all you really need to do is just, if you include this little bit of script in there and replace model.vmf with the name of your model, then you'll have this connection established to your model, and you'll be able to see this in the interface, okay? And then if we go next here, one of the other things that we are doing in our interface is we're creating total watch sales, and it's reporting out a number from our model. So this is our input, and this is a result that comes from our model. And what you can see here is we have total watch sales down here, which is, it's a simple equation. It's just repurchases. Let me see here. Oh, there it comes. Okay, it's repurchases plus new sales, and that's all it is in terms of an output. And that is what is creating this. And then what we want to do is, in this case, we want to run the model out to the end. So I just kind of arbitrarily put in a large number of steps here. But I'm going to say step the model a certain amount of time, and that's my simulate button. And again, it's using data F on click to do that. And then I can reset the model as well down here. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Okay, so those are the pieces that need to come together for that. And so I'm going to go ahead, and if I hit reset here, I can see the model kind of starting from scratch. And then if I hit simulate, what you can see is the total watch sales went up to a higher number. And if I if I reset again and change my purchase probability to say 8%, I'll get a new number out of this. It's different over time. And this is sort of the last number that's in here right now. Now, some of you may have noticed, and you say, gee, that's a kind of a unfriendly format for the purchase probability. That is a long string of numbers. I'd like to have that kind of look cleaner, and that certainly sounds reasonable. So the way that you can do that is you can use Excel-like formatting for Epicenter to format numbers. And you can see that actually here. So total sales is formatted with where it's comma delimited, but there's not any decimal points after it because total sales is an integer, right, or should be. And I can do the same thing here. I use a pipe, which is a vertical line, and I say how I want to format it. In this case, I'm going to say format it with a percentage like this, and that should do it for me. So if I save that and then go back into Epicenter and go to the interface, I can go in here and, like I said, there's multiple ways of doing it. I could just drag and drop that file back in here. Right now, what I'm going to do instead is just edit it here as another way. I guess I'll just retype it in this case. So I'm going to put in my pipe pound 0% for the purchase probability and go ahead and save that. And now if I go back to my project and refresh here, you can see now it's formatted at 8%, right? So that's a lot nicer looking than what I had before. And if I reset it, it should go back to 5% and so on. Okay, so you see the basics here from this about how to get things connected and communicate with the model. So what I want to do next is talk a little bit about how Vensim works as a modeling tool and how this ties into creating sort of the final interface in here as well. So Vensim as some of you may know, but some of you may not know, has different states that in terms of how the model works. And there's really two types of variables that can be changed within Vensim. So there's variables that can be changed before the model is initialized and variables that can be changed while the model is running. And what you can see here is, for example, you can change stocks before the model actually is in step 0. So you can say, I want to change, for example, market size, and that's assumed by Vensim to be an assumption that's going into the model. But once the model is running, you can no longer change these assumptions. At that point, you're only allowed to change variables if they're defined as gaming variables. So let's take a look at our Vensim model and just see how that looks here. So here we have our Vensim model, and we have a variable like market size, which is set at 25 million. Okay. And notice here, by the way, I kind of went quickly there. Notice here that this is set up as a constant in Vensim, right? It's not set up as some other kind of variable or something like that. And then we have other variables, like we've been playing with purchase probability, and we've been able to edit that as the model is running. The way in Vensim that you do that is you set it up as an auxiliary, and then you set that auxiliary up as a gaming variable. So if you go to type auxiliary gaming, that wraps it in this game function, and it makes it available. It makes Vensim and other tools like Epicenter that work with Vensim recognize that this is something that end users can change over time. And so what we have in here are two different types of assumptions that can be changed over time. And if I go back here, what you can see then is there's really different states in the model that we want to be able to do. We want to be able to set gaming variables for things that are as the model is running, but we might also want to change initial assumptions in the model, and we do that before the model is initialized. And that creates kind of essentially two different states that are running in a Vensim model. There's when you reset a Vensim model, the model is loaded, but it's not initialized. And you use that to set up a model assumption. So you use that to set model assumptions. Once you've set those model assumptions, you can start the game. And when you start a game, it initializes the model in step 0. And then subsequently, you can step through the model and make it run. And then when you're doing that, you're using gaming variables. So anytime after you start the game, you use these gaming variables for running it out. So let's take a look at how we put together our Vensim model to make both of those things happen simultaneously. Now, in your model, you may not care about this. You might only use, like the most common thing to do, as we were just doing in our simple example, is use gaming variables. But you might want to do both of these things together here. And so in our example, that's the way we've done it for today. So let's take a look at our files again. And well, first off, let me show you how that works, just as a reminder, because I went through it kind of quick before. We have our assumptions page as the kind of final working example. So I'm clicking through it into that. And what I see in here is my initial assumptions, where I set the market size for all runs, and I can set that to anything that I want. And then I hit start game. And so what I'm doing there is I'm setting the assumptions in my model before I actually get into running the model. And now I'm in state here, and now I can change the model as I progress through, and I can, for example, change the number of contacts per month or something like that and run it out. And if I reset that back with my original 10, I'll see different behavior that kind of emerges from that and things like that. And then if I want to go back and say I want to change those initial assumptions, I can go back in here and say, well, I really think it's 55 million, not 25 million customers. And that can potentially change some of the behavior. It certainly changes the total number of watch sales and things like that can occur over time. Here you see a larger number, 55 million, for the total number of potential customers and things. So that's how we're kind of using these things together. And this is an important thing to understand in terms of how the model actually gets constructed here, or the interface gets constructed. So let's take a look at how that was done here, and let's look at assumptions first. Okay, so we've got something that looks very similar to what we did before, where we have data fbind and we've got market size in here in this case. But what we're doing in this here is we're starting it off where we say reset on body. So we're saying when you come into this, when you load this page, what you need to do is reset the model. And what that does is put it in the state where it loads the model but doesn't initialize it, and allows you to put in these model assumptions. So that's what we're doing here. We're able to set that up. And then what we do is we create a link here that says start game, that lets us go through to the final page in this interface, and let me go back to that so you can see what that looks like. So we've got in this case, the 25 million, and we can click this link called Start Game to get it to run, and that then takes us to this next page that has these details on it. So that next page is called, as you can see up here, final.html, and final.html looks like this. And what is happened here is instead of reset, what we've said is when you come to this page, you start the game. And this means now we've initialized the model. The model is in step 0, and it's ready to run. All right, so that's kind of what's happening at this point. And from here, I can change these gaming variables, and I can do nice things here. Like, for example, instead of having it be a plain input, I can do it as a slider. And I just do that by calling it type range here and put the min and max in. And what's nice about this is we're using features that are built into HTML to create these kind of nicer controls in it. And then I'm ready to run it. And the way I run it is I say step in the model here and that's going to work on the simulate button. And if I want to reset it, I can also reset it and start the game over again. So that's sort of the way that this works here. When I hit reset like this, I can change the purchase probability within a range of 0 to 7, and then I can hit simulate and run that out over time and reset it and so forth. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is how graphs are created in this tool, and how you can create sort of more sophisticated graphs because of things that are available online versus things that are just available within tools like Vensim. And we're using this package called Contour, which is a package that Forio offers to make it relatively easy to build graphs. This is an open source project that you can use for anything. You could use it with Epicenter, but you could also use it outside of Epicenter. And if you go to forio.com/contour, you can see some details around it. So Contour allows you to do things that we're kind of used to seeing in System Dynamics, but are new to people outside of System Dynamics still, which is like these dragging lines and things like that. But you can also do other kinds of graphs, like line charts, of course, bar charts. You can do area charts. You can even do pie graphs and scatter charts and other things like that. And it's intended to be relatively easy to use. So if you look at a basic line chart here like this, the way that you work with it is you can specify points in it. And once you've specified them, you say, create a new contour chart and use that data to draw a line over time and then render it. So those things together kind of create that. So in Epicenter, you can see how that works with, let me see here. Here we go. Here with this contour example, where what we've done is we've said, I'm going to create a new contour chart. I'm going to define the x-axis as months, the y-axis title as new sales, and I'm going to just feed in a number of values for it. And when I look at that online, let me go back to that. Here we go. And look at Contour, it draws a chart like this. Now, this chart isn't actually connected to real data from our model. So to connect it to real data, what I need to do is, replace this line with something that subscribes to a data feed from my Vensim model. And the way I do that, as you can see in what we're calling basic chart here, is to use, let me make this a little bit bigger, to create this variable subscribe and then use that name total sales, and then that will feed that in instead. So it's just putting in this line, putting in the name of the variable to make a line chart that's connected up with that over time, and then you can specify kind of the details of the line chart above that. So all these examples are available on our in this set of things, and what we can do at the end of the webinar today is send out details around all this. And what I want to do just to wrap up for today is talk a little bit more about the platform and what it can do, and then talk about other things that you can do because it's an online platform and you can kind of take advantage of things. So we've talked a little bit about how you can use Epicenter and combine in other modeling languages to work with it and work with data too. But because Epicenter is a platform as a service, it's also, by the way, available for installing on your own servers if you prefer. It sort of has a broader set of capabilities. So one of the things that we do in some cases is subscribe to third-party services. So what we mean by that is APIs that maybe provide data around what the current market rates are for treasury bills or something. Or in the case of the route optimizer, we're getting real-time traffic data coming in. And so we can subscribe to that information as well and use that in our model. We can also provide external authentication services, and this is useful for large companies that need single sign-on for the application. So the application that you're doing with simulation is seamlessly integrated into a larger application, and the user doesn't have to log in twice. And so that's something else that's available in Epicenter. And then there's also ways of aggregating results from groups of users, say a classroom, to do comparisons and to say, who got the highest grade in the class, who got the lowest, what was the kind of range of results. I want to drill down into details as an administrator and things like that. So there's sort of these broader range of capabilities that exist there. All right, that was kind of a tour today of what Epicenter does and how to build out some examples in this model. And we have about 5 minutes left. What I want to do now is jump to answering some questions about the platform and about any questions you have about the language and things like that and how these things get integrated together. So we'll start to look at that and see what questions people have. Amber, have you seen anything come in through so far?
There was a question from Rod.
Mm-hmm.
He asked if the variable names in your model have, if that's a requirement. He just noticed that there were no spaces there.
Oh, so can you put spaces in the variable names? Is that right? Okay. Yeah, it's not a requirement, although I think it's easier to use in the tool if you don't have spaces in there. So what I would recommend is to use an underscore if you want to have things that are like spaces, but you can also use variable names without that have spaces. What you can't do, unfortunately, is use Vensim name. Like Vensim allows kind of anything for a variable name. Like if I put in percent market size here, it's actually, let me put it here, like this, that's allowable name in Vensim. And you can see, oh, did that not show up? Oh no, it didn't. That's weird. Anyway, that works. That's sort of an allowable name in Vensim. And in Epicenter, because it's connected to JavaScript, unique characters like percent or ampersand or asterisks or things like that as within the names of variables doesn't work. And so sometimes there's a bit of cleanup that you need to do with your variable names to eliminate those kinds of things. But sort of common names that what you basically need to do is make sure that your variable name starts with a letter and contains, ideally only letters, numbers, and underscores to make it relatively easy to do. But if you need to, you can use spaces, and there's a replacement thing that you can do for that. All right, terrific, thanks. Other questions, Amber?
Yeah, Esteban asked about teams and wants to know if the whole team works on one account or if each team member is going to have their own account on Epicenter.
The way it works, let me repeat the question first. I apologize for not doing that earlier. So Esteban is asking how team accounts work, and does each person have their own team account, or is there one general team account? I think that's the way, yeah. And the answer to that is it's one team account where members subscribe as team members to use it. So you only need one paid team account to make that work. And let me show you show you a little bit about how that works and how pricing on that works as well. So that'll clear it up. If you go to forio.com, our main website page, and then you go sorry, I'm not sharing right now. Thank you, Amber. So you go to our main website page, forio.com, and you go to Epicenter up here. Below that, you'll see pricing. And so in pricing, what you'll see is sort of the breakdown of this. And we've been using this personal free account. The team accounts start here. And what you can see is the team accounts are really controlled by the number of authenticated projects or logins that end users have. So that's what we're really talking about. Strangely, we call these small, medium, and large team accounts, but in reality, you can have any number of team members for all three of these accounts. What we really mean by small, medium, and large is the number of end users you can have, not the number of team members that you can have in your group. So you saw earlier this HIV sim, and I think we had, I don't know exactly, but maybe 10 or 12 people that were a part of that team. I think that was all in a medium account. I'm not 100% sure, but it's either a medium or large for that particular project. But anyway, there's not a limit to the number of team members that you can invite into a single account. What you're limited by instead is sort of the number of projects that that team can access. All right, other questions?
Yeah, Fabiano would like to know if you can connect the model to a database or data source.
So Fabiano would like to know if you can connect to outside data sources or databases. And the answer to that is yes, there's multiple ways of going about it. In some cases, what we're doing is directly connecting into existing data stores, other databases that are online that, these are more in like enterprise enterprise installations. So what's happening there is Epicenter is installed on a server along with near a database, so that they're kind of directly connected together. But there's other kinds of techniques that can be used even in the platform as a service option, and that's basically using these APIs and things like that. So when we can communicate using APIs to outside databases as well, and that makes it relatively easy to do so. So when I kind of quickly went through it, but this example here of this route optimizer actually uses 3 different APIs for doing it, and one of them is a database. So the city of San Francisco provides a database of all the businesses that exist in San Francisco, and I think there's like 50,000 of them. And so what this thing is doing, actually, when it initializes, it goes out and it pulls not all, but a sampling of those businesses to kind of create some arbitrary points in here. And so that's, in a sense, it's connecting to a live database here to get the names of these arbitrary businesses in San Francisco. And then it's using other APIs to use Google Maps. So this is a Google Maps drawing of the maps here, side by side. And then lastly, what it's doing, which is sort of interesting, is it's pulling real-time traffic data. So there's an API that's available for saying, what route is going to be the fastest route by traffic in terms of traffic, not in terms of distance among these points here, and it's using that in its calculation. So this is sort of an example of linking into various databases. I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Okay. Tim would like to know if the HTML and JavaScript scripts that were used today are available for him to look at.
So Tim would like to know if you can use the HTML and JavaScript scripts after this workshop, and yes, they will be available. We're going to send you, everyone who's signed up for this webinar, access to those files today. I think probably near the end of the day our time, which is 6 hours from now or something like that. And so you'll have those if you're calling in from far away. You might get those tomorrow morning in your email, but you'll have access to them. If you have any questions, after this, feel free to follow up with us. And I believe we have other questions too that we were unable to answer today. What we'll do is we'll follow up with you in those questions directly. Thanks very much for your time, and it was great working with all of you. I hope to see some interesting examples of Epicenter and Vensim in the near future. Bye-bye.